All right, new day, new mission. Today, I think what I'm gonna try to do is take the engine, the transmission and transfer case, which are on that pallet, and the clutch, which is in that box, and try to get them all together. The reason I wanna do that right now, I was thinking about it, to get the engine bay ready, so I've kind of got it set up the way it needs to be. I was gonna take the transmission and set it in here. So I was gonna put the front cross member in, I was gonna put this cross member in, so I would have the front and the rear mounts. Then I would have that mount and that mount, which I could modify. I could see where exactly I needed to modify it. And then I could also make sure where the frame has been clearanced, that before I weld in some plates into that to box it in, that I'm gonna have enough room with the engine and transmission where it's gonna sit. So I thought about just putting the transmission in, but then I was like, well, I need to go ahead and put the engine and transmission in together to make sure the whole combination is gonna sit at what angle and everything else is gonna sit at. So I think today I'm gonna start working on getting the engine, transmission, transfer case, clutch together, which is a job itself. So I'm gonna move some of this stuff around, get the engine ready to be lifted with the cherry picker, get the transmission transfer case, get the clutch out, start reading the install directions on that, because it's got some shims and stuff you need to put in there and a few things you need to just make sure are correct before you lock it in. Another note today, so where I'm at in Alabama, well, it doesn't matter where I'm at in Alabama, the entire state, 67 counties are under an emergency, state of emergency. The governor has issued a state of emergency for the entire state because of the storms that are coming in later. It's supposed to be pretty severe. It's gonna be a little bit later in the day. I'm just gonna start piddling around out here, should be fine. See how far I can get before the storms really start hitting. And I'll kind of see how bad it's gonna get where I'm at. We're kind of where the storm should be coming in at. So it'll probably get really loud in here, but this video might end prematurely, but I'm gonna start doing a little bit of stuff and just see how far I can get. Okay, so these items I haven't really shown, we've kind of teased them a little bit. So this is an Evo X 5-speed GSR transmission, and this is an Evo X GSR transfer case. So obviously this will be the new transmission going into Gooch. Both of these items have been to Shep Trans. Big shout out to Shep for helping me out here. They completely went through both of them. We did pretty much everything you can do to these to kind of beef them up, make sure they hold, make them reliable. The Evo X transmission here also has a different final drive ratio. We swapped out to a 430 final drive. With the transfer case obviously completely gone through. And I think they even do a bolt upgrade from an 8mm to a 10mm or something like that. So I mean, these things are ready to go, and obviously they are beautiful. So huge shout out to Shep for helping me out with the transmission transfer case, and hopefully we can get that put on that Evo X engine over there and see what we need to do next. So before the transfer case and transmission go on the engine, obviously we've got to do a few things to this. So back here where the transmission is going, the Evo X rear main seal has to go on. So it's not something I could get to with it on the engine stand. So we've got to put this thing on the cherry picker. That way I can remove it from the engine stand and get to this rear main seal back here and make sure that gets bolted on. And I think once that's on, we are ready to move on to the clutch. Now this clutch is a Quartermaster twin disc clutch, and I'm gonna need both hands to get this thing out of here, so give me just a second. Boom, just like that. This is the brand new Quartermaster twin disc clutch that is going in. Obviously comes with its own flywheel. If I can see here, we will be swapping from this shift fork style setup that the Evo X originally comes with, so it will no longer be a fork. We are converting to a just solid hydraulic throwout bearing here. Oh, so we've got our pack of shims to set our bearing preloads, and there's a lot of stuff we have to measure before we go installing this thing. So there's a bit here, things to check before you begin. So we're gonna start with that. start going through the install process and see if we can get this thing set up on this engine. All right, so rear main seal is on. I went ahead and got this plug in there. I think that's where that plug goes. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that one goes there. There's another one that goes over here. I'm building an Evo X engine from scratch, from boxes of bolts and everything else I've acquired. I've never built a 4B11 before, but I'm pretty sure that's where that one goes. Correct me if I'm wrong, but rear main seal is on, and just a heads up, as I'm throwing this flywheel and clutch on here, if I start doing a time lapse where you can't hear me talk anymore, you just see what I'm doing, just know it's storming. We're supposed to have thunderstorms, rain, hail, everything. And if it's even a little bit of rain in this garage, I have to scream for anybody to hear me. So just know if I'm not talking for the rest of the video, it's because you're not gonna hear me anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and read all these instructions before I start putting the clutch and flywheel on, and just make sure everything is good, measure anything I need to measure, and then start getting this flywheel put on. After the flywheel will be the clutch. So here we go. So flywheel is torqued on. So we've got the ARP flywheel bolts. We did install some blue Loctite onto these, and also some ARP Ultra Lube under the head of those to make sure we get the correct torque value. Got those torqued on. So typically there's a little tool that can actually hold the flywheel in place, but what I did is just lowered it down low enough to where I could get a pull bar on the crank pulley. Because it's torqued down to basically the same value these are. It's like 95 to 100, somewhere in that range. So I put that pull handle on the other side of the engine, and it kept it from turning while I was torquing all of these down in the correct order. So that worked out pretty well. So next up, we're gonna be getting the clutch plates, the floaters, and the cover plate on this thing. And hopefully we can get this thing knocked out pretty quick. Well, the storm is here. In two different ways, I guess you could say. One, the clutch is on. Two, there's a possible tornado coming in. The power is flickered a few times, and as much as I hate to do it, I'm gonna have to stop here for just a little while until these storms blow through. So I'm gonna put a pause on this for now, but the flywheel and clutch is on. Next up is gonna be the throwout bearing installed in the transmission, and hopefully you'll be able to hear me over all the weather. So gonna put a pause on it here, and I'll come back to it in a little while. So it's been a few hours. It's gonna keep storming pretty well all day, all night. I think the worst is kind of past us now. There was a few tornadoes. Most of the threat went north and up around us, so not a huge deal. So I'm back out here in the garage working. Last update, clutch and flywheel was on, so now we're working on swapping to this hydraulic throwout bearing. So to install it, you remove the factory throwout bearing tube here. This is where the factory one slides on. Your fork comes in here and lifts it off. So we're going to take that out. And the bolts for that are these little short guys that just hold that tube in there. So when you swap to this bearing, obviously you've got to get longer bolts, which the Quartermaster kit does not include, so you have to go get them yourself. I didn't know that, so that kind of sucked. Went to Ace Hardware down the road. They were closed for the inclement weather, but me and Cody were passing by O'Reilly's, and O'Reilly's was open, so we stopped by there, and I think we got the correct bolts for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this thing in there. Once this is installed, you do have to take a couple measurements from the face of the bell housing to the actual throwout bearing itself, so you can get that clearance, and then from the face of the engine to the fingers of the clutch, you've got to get that and see what your clearance is going to be. They do include a pack of shims to shim it to where it needs to be. I think they recommend 0.16 inches. So that's kind of what we're shooting for. So instead of holding the camera and doing all that, I'm gonna throw this in there with our new bolts. I'm gonna take all the measurements I need and then possibly add some shims to set it where it needs to be. And I think the next time I'll see you guys, this is gonna be shimmed up, ready to install on the engine. I am not cut out to do this by myself. But the transmission is now on the engine. So I am missing 1 or 2 bell housing bolts. So I'm gonna put that on my list of things to order in the next week, which is fine because the engine won't be going in the car permanently right now. It's just to make sure all the clearances as far as the physical engine transmission can go in there. And I'm sorry if you can't hear me, it's still storming, but my next step, I'm gonna go ahead and get the transfer case bolted on here. That way I have one whole unit to put into the front of the car and see kind of where everything's gonna fit. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that installed, probably off camera so I don't look like a doofus, or if you guys wanna see it, whatever, but we'll go ahead and get all this stuff put on there. And I don't know how much more we're doing today. It's already pretty late. We've got some storms going on, but I want to go ahead and get this on there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be back in just a minute. Oh, okay. Last update for the night. Ta-da! All the pieces are together. I would like to keep going tonight. It's getting a little late, and to be honest, my spinal cord is protesting in the streets right now. So I'm probably gonna go take some Advil, drink a bunch of water and lay down for tonight, get a good night's sleep, come out here in the morning and try to continue working on this thing. So I've already started adding the little motor mount bits. So I've got this side motor mount. I'm gonna go ahead and put that one on. And then tomorrow I'll be adding the subframe, the front subframe up here. I'll probably go ahead and put the steering rack on there just to make sure nothing's going to contact anything. And then the cross member where the front motor mount goes. The rear motor mount is on the subframe, and then mount over here, mount over here. This mount, for now, I'm just going to put these 2 bolts in it just to hold it in for, testing the clearances and the notched frame down there. And then later on, I'll figure out if I'm going to modify the body for this mount, for this bolt here, or if I'm going to modify the mount itself, but should hold no issue. That's how I had it before I pulled the entire car apart, so I'm okay with that. So I'll probably get this thing in here tomorrow if possible. Get all that stuff in here and make sure down here when you put the Evo X transmission in the Caliber, you do have to notch that frame out right there. It's a pretty rough cut just to get it in. Whenever I initially cut it to get it in. So I was just cutting it to get it in here, and then if the transmission fits in here and I've got plenty of room, then I'll go ahead and clean it up really nice and box it in and add some strength back to it. But for now, it's just an ugly cut. So hopefully tomorrow we can get working on that. That's one of the big things to finish. So obviously, as I've said, we've got that to finish. We've got that to modify to finish up. There's a couple other things, like there's some holes right in here I need to weld shut. Obviously the paint needs to go back in. I just want to do a little bit more sanding down here. Clean this up really good, paint it black just like the rest of the car is, and then we'll be dropping everything in for the final time. So in the meantime, whenever it hits next week, whenever everybody opens back up, I'll be placing an order for some more bell housing bolts as well as transfer case bolts, because I've only got 3 or 4 holding it in right now. And I want to make sure all those bolts are in before I drop all of this in the car for the final time. But here's where we're at, guys. Lots of progress being made. I'm not in too much of a hurry. This is just kind of the speed I work at. I like to get stuff done as quickly as possible. That way I don't lose it out of my head. You know, I've got a plan to do everything. And if I wait too long, I'll forget everything I'm doing. So I'm just moving kind of quick, but not too fast to where it's stressing me out. So that's probably going to do it for this video. I'll probably do another video tomorrow. Keep with the trend of some daily uploads. So I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.